Hey there, you're listening to the Boston Celtics newsfeed. We are Celtics Roundtable, powered by CLNS Media. Matt Ignal here, alongside Jonathan Levy and Evan Valenti. So let's get this show rolling, guys. If you've been listening to us in the last few episodes, we established that in order to land Gordon Hayward in free agency, the Celtics need to shed salary by renouncing their unrestricted free agents and restricted free agent Kelly Olynyk. They still fall $4 million short of opening up the necessary salary to get Gordon Hayward at that 7 to 9 year max. So either they'll have to then either trade a slew of the young guys who are on cheap contracts that will come in handy as the Celtics navigate this difficult cap environment, or one of Jay Crowder, who's locked in on a cheap deal for 3 more years, their best player Isaiah Thomas, or, and perhaps most likely, one of Marcus Smart or Avery Bradley, who will both be due big raises in 2018. And this was all explained to us on the last few podcasts by Celtics Hub Cap expert Sam Sheehan. We've had a couple of days to think about what he's been trying to say. Has your perspective on this, Levy, shifted at all, or do you still feel like the Celtics should not go into this with like a closed mind, like, oh, Bradley's going to be the guy? You were suggesting, for instance, that the Celtics should just try to suss out whatever is the best deal they can get. Are you still on that train?
Absolutely. I don't understand this notion of this is the guy they should trade without knowing what's coming back in return. To me, what's coming back in return should be all of the discussion pretty much, and then you can make better decisions. So if we assume we can get equal value or fair value for any of these guys, then I would probably be looking to trade Avery Bradley myself, only because I believe the Celtics are not going to move Isaiah, and I don't think you can really get fair value for Isaiah. And I believe Smart's going to sign for a much, much cheaper deal than Avery Bradley is. And Smart can easily come off the bench. He doesn't have to be a starter. He probably won't be a starter on this team. But it's all an unknown. What does the rest of the league think about these guys? How do they value them?
Let's talk
really
about
the
that.
Key question here.
Let's talk about that, because you say that, and my only counter to that is that I don't think Avery Bradley, with 1 year left on his deal and no, restricted free agency tag to go along with it, I don't think there's going to be a lot of value in that. Like, he could be valuable to like a playoff team, but as Sam said, like those teams are going to be up against the tax too. So I don't know. I don't really know what Avery Bradley could really return here. What are your thoughts, Evan?
Well, I mean, I think if you take the Avery Bradley move and you package it with some of the other stuff that you have to try and get something seriously valuable. I mean, you still have, whether it's on the table or not is one thing, but you still have the Memphis pick later down the road. You have the Clippers pick later down the road. You have your 2018 pick. You have a bunch of other things that you can pile on with an Avery Bradley to get something of value back. This is one of those things where Danny Ainge might have to take a slight loss on a trade one time to just get an open opportunity to get a guy like Gordon Hayward. Because the question is it becomes, do you trade Avery Bradley or Jay Crowder, right? Or Marcus Smart? And the reason why you trade Avery Bradley is because of the contract, his next contract. Jay Crowder's next contract is far down the road, which is why he's more valuable. This is a crossroads. Danny Ainge has done a great job of assembling the assets necessary to build a contender. Now the next step, the hardest step, is figuring out what to do to build the next contender. There are so many roads to go down to. We've covered them all on this show. But finding the best one is really, really hard. And this is where Danny gets to quote-unquote make his money, is right here. We've talked about Avery Bradley because it's the easiest one to move potentially. And even though the max return might not be as much, but that next contract scares you so much because a two-way player like Avery Bradley that can shoot threes, being an elite 3-and-D type player is a valuable commodity. But at $20 million a year, I don't think the Celtics can swallow that pill.
I mean, I think they can swallow it if they're not also signing Isaiah Thomas to a max deal and getting Marcus Smart on a cheaper deal. I think they can make that happen, but that means Isaiah has to go, and you got all the same problems, right? Like I agree with you, Evan. This is, if there's a trade where Danny Ainge is going to lose, it's when you're signing Gordon Hayward or some other max level free agent and you're trying to clear space. The other teams are going to know they have you over a barrel. They're going to expect to get discount rates, and they're going to get them, and that's fine because you're not just trading Avery Bradley then for the 12th pick. You're trading Avery Bradley for the 12th pick and Gordon Hayward, and suddenly that's a big win.
Well, if you do it at the draft, right? I don't think they have you over a barrel that early. I mean, this is just open.
Well, I guess not, because there's no known commodity yet, because the free agency comes later. So yeah, your point, Matt, is valid.
Yeah, fair enough with that. But the point is more like in terms of whatever it is you're getting for Avery, if indeed it is that. By the way, do the Celtics need another first round draft pick anyway? We got Yabusele, we got Zizic, we got 2 number ones next year, we got the number 1 overall pick, a whole bunch of second rounders. I got Abdul Nader coming out of my ears already here.
Yeah, I mean the Celtics don't need another guy, but they got to get something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they could get something way down the road or something. Maybe when Markelle Fultz and Jaylen Brown are entering their 30s, we got this sweet asset coming in, a nice number 3
that 2024 first rounder from the Bucks.
Yeah, it's interesting. I almost don't believe though that this is going to happen at the draft. Danny Ainge, he said earlier this week that, oh yeah, we can afford everybody. But then, the very next sentence, he said, this was in a Steve Bulpett column. These are questions to which I don't have answers right now. So a little bit of classic Danny Ainge doublespeak. But while the draft makes sense, I just can't imagine Danny Ainge parting with a guy who he's called his favorite player, the best perimeter defender in the league. It's just really hard for me to see. I almost feel even if it doesn't make as much sense in terms of the salary cap and luxury tax, that he might be more quick to depart with some of the young guys who haven't really gotten a chance, plus Terry Rozier, and then just sort of hey, we'll figure it all out later, because I don't think any of these guys can recoup a major asset. So just sitting on your hands, I don't think it's and just getting more information about what works and what doesn't, and who's more likely to outplay their next contract or not. I feel like that's, you're not really losing out on too much here.
So my follow-up to that would be, does Danny wait until what? The trade deadline mid-season? Because, the one thing about this Bradley contract is it goes back to that old rule. If you're not going to sign him, you might as well trade him, because at least you get something for him. It's not like you, at the end of the year, Avery Bradley walks away and you have nothing. That's not the way Danny works. So, if it doesn't happen in the draft, when does it happen? The dominoes have to fall at some point. It's just a matter of when.
The Dunked On guys, Nate Duncan and Danny LaRue, they assume that Marcus Smart would be the guy to go in this hypothetical, Gordon Hayward signing, that they would have to part ways with Smart, I guess under the assumption that Avery Bradley's sort of the better player. I'm not 100% sure I'm on board with that. I actually think that Marcus Smart is more likely to outplay his next contract than Avery Bradley is, because of the fact that he's younger, and because of the fact that, if he does make this shooting leap, and that doesn't have to be, he doesn't have to make a Jay Crowder shooting leap where he goes from 28% to 41% or something. But, it's not out of the question that he could get up to 33, 34%, and then you're talking about a really valuable player. I don't know. I mean, we talked Avery Bradley at $20 million. That seems a little bit conservative, but I think you're in the ballpark. What do you think Smart might get, on the open market, even with the restricted tag, $15 million, $16 million? I mean, I think the secret's out that, Marcus Smart is a culture changer. I think teams might be willing to bet on that guy and say, hey, let's add a little bit of toughness to our team.
One team is going to be, at least the Brooklyn Nets will be after him a little bit. I mean, because that's the way they have to play the game from here on out.
He fits because he shoots threes and doesn't make them.
That's why they throw a bunch of money at Alan Crabb and what was that guy, Tyler Johnson from the Heat.
All right, I want to tell you all about HelloFresh, the meal kit delivery service that makes cooking more fun so you can focus on the whole experience and not just the final plate. Each week, HelloFresh creates new delicious recipes with step-by-step instructions designed to take around 30 minutes for everyone from novices to seasoned home cooks short on time. There, they source the freshest ingredients measured to the exact quantities needed so that there's no food waste. HelloFresh delivers food to your doorstep in a recyclable, insulated box for free, and they are now offering light spring meals and have just introduced breakfast options. Now, the loyal listeners of CLNS Media will get a very special offer. Get this. Because you are a loyal listener to the Boston Celtics newsfeed, use the promo code BEAT30 for $30 off your first week of HelloFresh. Again, support the Celtics Roundtable and try HelloFresh for free. Simply visit HelloFresh.com and enter the promo code BEAT30. Okay, back to the Roundtable. All right, so here's the thing with Avery Bradley, and I've seen all the YouTube comments. People really love Avery Bradley, and they were not happy that certain people on this podcast were suggesting that the Celtics might want to move on from him this summer. And from what I also gather, they really don't love Jay Crowder. But I talked about this on the last podcast, that we have a large like multi-year sample, and it's pretty consistent, that suggests the Celtics' net rating with Avery Bradley on the floor is not great compared to guys like Marcus Smart, and especially Jay Crowder, who's this sort of, plus-minus darling. And, I suggested that, maybe instead of doubting the advanced stats, because it becomes harder and harder to do with every extra year of data that we have that suggests that, Bradley isn't as good as his reputation, that, maybe there's elements of Bradley's game that really stick out that make him seem like better to our eyes, and that the things that he's weak in we tend to ignore. Like, he's a great on-ball defender, but he's not a very good off-ball defender. He goes up and gets rebounds this year, but he doesn't really box out. It's that sort of thing. And it's sort of the opposite thing with Jay Crowder. So, I look at Marcus Smart and I say, the Celtics are better on the floor with Marcus Smart on the floor with him playing than they are with Avery Bradley, despite the way that Avery Bradley sort of sticks out in your mind as this great two-way player. So to me, it's just far more likely that Marcus Smart is going to outperform his next contract than Avery Bradley. He might be as good or better than him already, and if he takes that shooting leap on a cheaper deal, the Celtics are just going to reap huge benefits from that.
I mean, Avery Bradley, I love the guy, don't get me wrong, but he does things that actually almost no one else on the Celtics does, in bad ways as well as good ways. He's an incredible on-ball defender, as we're saying. He also takes more long twos than anyone else on the team, and I know he's good at it. I mean, the only reason why Jay Crowder ever takes a long two these days is because his foot's on the line like it always is, and he's trying to take a three.
And he doesn't get to the line much either. And don't get me wrong, I love Avery Bradley. I think he's a genuinely good dude, and I named my dog Avery. But year after year, I just have to reckon with the fact that the advanced metrics say that he doesn't help the Celtics score more points than the other team, as well as some other guys.
It's hard. It's hard because you've seen him for so long. You connect him with the KG days when he was taking Ray Allen's spot in the starting lineup. You have a lot of good memories of Avery Bradley. You watched him grow up from a 19, 20-year-old, fresh off the boat with Texas, and came onto the roster and earned his minute. So if you're not going to trade Isaiah Thomas, who's going to make more money than Avery Bradley, then you have to trade somebody, because this roster cannot win an NBA title the way it's currently constituted, and everybody's falling in love with the idea of adding Gordon Hayward or Blake Griffin, and the only way to make that happen is by creating that spot. Yeah. Somebody has to be a casualty, and as you look at all the evidence, and you look at plus minus and contracts and flexibility, you just keep coming back to the same guys. Marcus Smart, Avery Bradley, and Jay Crowder. And the one that it hurts to do because you've watched him so much, it's Avery Bradley. It's not Jay Crowder, because Jay Crowder's contract rocks right now. Avery Bradley's doesn't. If you switch the contracts, I think everybody would be okay with getting rid of Jay Crowder, because it just feels like you've been watching Avery Bradley for so long, you have more of a connection to him. But in the end, these numbers in a book, in an Excel sheet somewhere, actually matter. And Bradley's hurts the most, and that sucks.
Levy, where do you fall on this Marcus Smart versus Avery Bradley debate?
I'm believing ultimately that, I know you said Marcus Smart 15-16. I'm believing Marcus Smart's ultimately, if he were to stay with the Celtics, is going to sign a deal worth about $12 million. And I think Avery's going to sign a deal worth closer to $23-24 million. At those prices and sort of what the implications of those contracts would be, I prefer Smart. I agree with you, Matt, that's the place where you get the value, and Danny Ainge is all about value with his contracts. So Marcus Smart can actually be worth a lot more than that $12 million if it works out, and is almost always going to at least be worth that $12 million. Avery Bradley's probably going to be worth about $20 to $24 million too, but it's hard for him to be worth much more than that. Marcus Smart's also significantly younger than Bradley, still has real upside. Avery Bradley does keep getting better year to year, but there are marginal improvements, and Marcus Smart still has a chance to take a significant leap forward. So I'm going to pick Smart if it's between those two guys.
And you mentioned it, Evan. It's time for the Celtics, to pivot a little bit from the roster that they have now, which is good enough to maybe get you to the Eastern Conference Finals or squeak into the Eastern Conference Finals and not do too much there, winning on basically a miraculous buzzer beater by Avery Bradley. But, it's time for the Celtics to pick who their guys are and to try and turn some of these good players into great players. And like we've been saying, that's sort of the most difficult thing here, and it's going to require some difficult choices, and the Celtics might lose a couple of these deals. But if they gain a guy like Gordon Hayward, it's all going to be worth it. So definitely we're going to be keeping a very close eye on this, and we're actually going to be talking about in our next podcast what might happen if the Celtics don't land Gordon Hayward in free agency, because then all hell seems to break loose. So we want to thank you all for tuning in to today's podcast. Sorry if you're a huge Avery Bradley fan and we offended you a little bit, but
I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry for that. Matt's sorry. I'm not.
All right. Well, for Evan Valenti, not feeling sorry, and Jonathan Levy, I'm Matt Ignal. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to us on the Boston Celtics newsfeed. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes. That really helps us out. And you can follow us on Twitter at CLNS Roundtable. And once again, we want to thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow talking a little bit about what the Celtics might do if they don't get Gordon Hayward. Stay tuned for that.